Hello, everybody. Oh, welcome.
Hello, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are.
It's wonderful to see everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Exciting to have you here.
Good morning.
My name is Katrin Muff. I guess we're going to get going right away. It's my great pleasure to welcome you for this sub-session of Positive Impact Rating, where we have 4 deans who have of top performing schools who will share here not only their best practices, but also what kind of insights they have about transforming their schools. And we've got some juicy questions in store for them to make sure that we can learn as much as possible from these schools. And as you're joining, welcome everybody. We also have some participants of the Positive Impact Rating who are joining us here. We wish we could all see you in person. It's so nice that you're taking a moment out of your busy day to be here with us. So let me briefly introduce you to our fabulous 4 speakers, deans. I'm starting with Jordi Diaz, who is a dean of EADA Business School in Barcelona, Spain. I guess we all wish we were there with him. He is executive director, thank you, Thomas, of the European Foundation for Management Development, EFMD Global. What I find really interesting about Jordi is he serves on various advisory boards in several business schools, and his community service membership includes business fighting poverty. So I'm curious how that links to the experience that he shares at business school when he will talk. Then secondly, I would like to introduce Percy Marquina, the Dean of Centrum PUCP in Business School Peru. Welcome, Percy. I guess you would have traveled the furthest to Vienna if you would have made it to Vienna. Percy is a researcher and professor, distinguished for his academic excellence and intellectual production. He holds 2 doctoral degrees. What I like mostly when I look at his long kind of continuous developing and learning programs is that he just seems to be a dedicated learner, which is amazing for deans. I'm really hats off to that. And I particularly like, Percy, your choice of the participant-centered learning course that he took at Harvard Business School. So just picking up that one. His list of ongoing executive development programs is impressive. Then thirdly, I'd like to introduce Ajit Parulekar, who is director of Goa Institute of Management, GIM, I call it GIM, in India. Thank you for having traveled all the way to Vienna with us here as well. You've been at the GIM for 2 decades. And what I really appreciate about Ajit is he's passionate about the future of learning. He has a focus on universal healthcare access and sustainable business models. While he was director at Goa, he has introduced 3 new cutting-edge degree granting programs, academic programs, and he has established a Center for Excellence in Sustainable Development. We will really look forward to learning from you about your, I think you call it in your own words, even an aggressive kind of drive for bringing sustainability to your school. Really very much looking forward to it. Then fourth, but not least, we have Dr. Varun Nagaraj, the Dean Designate of SP Jain Institute of Management and Research, Mumbai in India, also from India, welcome. He is a practitioner scholar with 30 years of industry experience, leading both in digital product and service innovation. So most recently, he was the COO of Bitly, an AI-based company enabling digital transformation. Before, he operated as a CEO, and he led the transformation of Sierra Monitor Corporation. His work focuses on team and how teams learn and innovate in unfamiliar contexts. And I think that will be most interesting to us as well. So I'm really excited to have 4 such innovative, learning-oriented, among the deans. And of course, we have an important time reserved for all the participants to ask us questions. So please do feel free to add chat questions questions to the chat, and I'll be including them, and we'll have a dedicated time for that. I'd like to share just briefly a couple of slides of the positive impact rating, because this is kind of the framing of our conversation. The 4 deans that we have here today have all performed extremely well in our 2021 positive impact rating. You see here that for the first time, we actually have 4 schools that are performing at our top level of 5 as pioneering schools. 2 of them are here, Goa Institute of Management and Jain Institute of Management Research is here. And then we have got two of the level 4 schools here, Centrum PUCP Business School in Peru and EADA Business School in Spain. Both of them have participated already for the 2nd time in the positive impact rating, and it will be interesting to hear from them how the rating has helped them advance, maybe even accelerate their transformation at their schools. They have achieved level 4 of 5 in they're what we call a transforming school. We do have schools listed along all the levels. However, in the interest of only sharing and celebrating the best, we only share the top 3 schools. What is the positive impact rating? It is a dual value proposition. On one hand, it is a rating tool where we are capturing the voice of students who will rate their schools in terms of positive impact rating. And in the other side, it is a support tool for the school development. So we hope that with the insight of the students, this will help the school to transform, to improve their positive impact. Now, to frame the conversation, and this is already my last slide, I would like to just kind of point out what is behind the positive impact rating. We measure the school's positive impact in 3 areas. We call them energizing, educating, and engaging. And in energizing, we look at the dimension of governance and culture. In educating, we look at the kinds of programs, the learning methods, and the student support. And engaging, we're looking at institutions as a role model and their public engagement. So just so you know how we are measuring the impact of the schools, what kind of questions we ask the students when they rate their schools. So given that we've got the answers of the 4 schools who are represented here, we have kind of asked them to prepare their best practice areas in the dimensions here that we're seeing. And to get started, I'm going to stop sharing here so we can actually see this, the themes rather than the slide. I would like to invite Ajit Parulekar of Goa to talk about governance. So this was one of the first practice examples that we have, governance and culture. So your school has done extraordinarily well in this area. Please, Ajit, tell us why.
Sure. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, depending upon which part of the world that you are in. Thank you, Katrin. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for PIR for the good work that you do. I think it's really great that we have a couple of things that the rating does. I just thought I should talk about these 2 things before I talk about what we do in terms of governance and culture. I think one of the good parts about the rating, it's a rating and it's not a ranking, and therefore it's a lot more collaborative and not as competitive. And so I'm glad that we have people from different schools who are part here and who are going to share their experiences, and I hope to learn something from my fellow colleagues, both who are the fellow deans as well as the other participants. And I think the second part is best for the world rather than best in the world is something that really sounds good. In terms of governance, I think what we do, the first thing is, what is the foundation of the school? What is it? What is the core purpose? What's the mission and vision of the school? And I think that's something right from the time the school was founded, and subsequently as time went by, we decided to contextualize it to the times that we live in. So we were just in the middle of a re-envisioning kind of exercise. But I'll talk about what was our mission, for the 2014-20 period, and a lot of those elements are continued. At that point in time, we looked at sustainability, diversity, and inclusion as being an important constituent about what the purpose of the organization is. And for a business school, especially in the developing world, that's not a very easy component to have in your mission, right? It's quite interesting though to note that, you know, three Indian business schools seem to be doing, you know, quite well. So it looks like that's something that there are a lot of other leading schools also who think it's important, even in emerging economies, to have this as part of what they do. When we've re-envisioned our mission this time, we've kind of broadened it to look at responsibility, and not just sustainability, diversity, and inclusion, but to go beyond that to all areas of responsible management. And I also think that, you know, when you look at the SDG framework, it kind of covers so many different areas. And therefore, I think when we look at responsibility, we include all of those areas. So as part of a vision statement, we'd like to be a preeminent school of management, education, and research. And we'd like to create transformative leaders and leadership practices which are focused on responsibility, on ethics, and on sustainable business practices. And that's something that, you know, whilst mission statements and vision statements could just be something that's, you know, that's written down and as part of fancy documents, it's extremely important that how we were able to translate this into real life, how to bring it live into student learning projects, into the research agenda of the institution, into the culture and ethos of the institution. So I'll talk about one of the activities that I thought was important for us. So when we looked at, you know, the earlier mission and the visioning exercise, at that point in time, coincidentally, we also put up a new campus for ourselves. So that was one way to also illustrate all the things that we believed in. So in the campus, it doesn't even just matter what you say, you also got to practice. And when you got to practice, right from the lay of the land to the way the design of your buildings are, to the way the philosophy of management of campus, to the programs you run, to the kind of people that you hire, I think all of these things were something that we had the opportunity, since we're looking at a kind of a new establishment, we had the opportunity to bring a lot of these things in place. One of the things we did as part of the sustainable part that we looked at was put in a center of excellence called the Center for Social Sensitivity and Action, which looked at business as being economic sustainability, environment sustainability, and from a responsibility point of view, societal sustainability, also social sustainability. As part of that center, one of the early activities that we took up, and an activity they're immensely proud of, is something called the Give Goa initiative. So this Give Goa project, now over the last 11 years, every year we engage with something like 60 different projects, and students work the entire year with this project. Now, why do we call it Give Goa? One is community engagement, giving back to the community. Much more important, we thought, was a way in which we can have. See, a lot of students go to business school. They come from a little more elitist kind of backgrounds in that sense. More so in emerging economies, because business school is reasonably expensive and is not very easy to access for everyone. We wanted them really to have the spirit of understanding what different parts of society go through, to be sensitized to that, so that it changes their worldview when they become managers and they get into leadership positions in society, including leadership positions in business. So what is the focus of this Give Goa initiative? Was to have projects that were based on service learning pedagogy. So in this, we had three components. As part of those three components, one was obviously an action component. Doing something in classroom is different from actually going to the field, feeling what's happening, seeing things, experiencing, and then also coming about, knowing, a lot of times people in business school live in ivory towers. And when you see that, when you got to think about plans, you are able to see whether they are possible to action, what are the kind of barriers that you face, and see that real life. And that really, I think, makes a big difference in the way how you're able to, let's say, nurture leadership for the future. So one part of it is action. The other part is reflection. We made sure that we had each of them reflecting, making reflection reports, making videos, talking to people in the community, trying to become, so to say, champions and warriors of different causes. And that's what we thought was an important part. And third, of course, is to bring in theory along with it. So we had a small component that was also a component which we call SRA, social responsibility and action. And we thought all of these three together will be part of this program. Of course, to complement this program, we also realized that students are motivated. Once they go through this, they're motivated by different causes. And therefore, we gave an opportunity by having variety of electives right from, at that point in time, carbon trading was important, and therefore looking at, calculating carbon footprint and looking at how lifestyle choices make a difference. There are others who are interested in ethics, especially in terms of reporting standards for corporate governance. So we had a variety of different courses that were introduced, which were also specialized. And at the same time, what we also did was, because it's part of our mission, and thankfully you have, now both EFMD as well as AMBA, as well as ACSB also aligned to this. And therefore, it also became a part of the assurance of learning networks. And therefore, a lot more courses were looking at sustainability as being a part of this initiative. Mm-hmm. Of course, maybe let me just conclude by saying, over a period of time, what we also did was, we had to, some years later, now 10 years are up, we want to show what is the impact of the work that we do. So some years back, we saw that the Hobbs School did, phenomenal work in terms of having an SDG dashboard. We thought that's something that's early enough for us to be able to adopt. So we took some time till we started measuring the impact and our contribution to different SDGs. And, last year we were able to, for the first time, report on that SDG dashboard. We've been able to align 26, I think 25 out of the 26 student clubs. They now have owned, certain SDGs that they'd like to contribute towards, and they'd like to map towards the SDGs and also measure the kind of impact that they do. So I think that's been phenomenal. Of course, it's pretty early. They've done this for the first time. And we do think that it's going to be an iterative learning process. And over a period of time, they'll be able to learn this. The other good part that we're able to do is, 2 years back, we put in place a Center for Center for Excellence in Sustainable Development. And that center now has just come out with a biodiversity report for the region and for the institute. That's only on flora, but they're looking at also a fauna report. And they're also looking at a sustainability report. Now, the important thing is, how do we incorporate this in student learning? How do we bring visibility to students? And I think I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll talk about, that's what I had to say about governance and culture. Thank you.
Ajit, many thanks. Appreciate it. It's fascinating to listen. It's our hour is so short, so I would really invite all of us to kind of try and speak shortly. Although it's fascinating to listen to you. Before introducing or before asking Jordi to talk about learning, kind of following to what you were saying about, but how do we translate that and make that relevant for students? I just wanted to quickly apologize. I made an error when introducing Jordi. He works for EADA in business school in Spain, not ESADE. May make no difference to us. I know it makes a huge difference in Spain. Jordi, apologies.
No problem.
No hard feelings. So tell us, EADA has been very well known, at least across Europe, for doing great work with their students. What do you think? How do you attribute the success that you've had?
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. Well, I'll help you with the timing, Katrin. Don't worry. And no problem to be with our friends and colleagues from ESADE. So we are part of this Barcelona cluster. And by the way, we are talking about sustainability, and sustainability is about a systems thinking, as it was previously mentioned by my colleagues. So we know that we are in the same game in this regard to become good, for the world. And in our sense, and I have a couple of colleagues as well in the call. So it's always nice that someone is hearing what you are saying as someone that is in the school as well. I think that it goes back to the origins of our place. EADA founded 64 years ago as an executive center, helping at that given time to develop more what today is very well known as the soft skills, the personal development, the leadership component, and in not only the hard skills and the knowledge. And I think the fact that all our programs start with the individual, so we take them we have a campus outside the city, and we revisit with participants, no matter how senior they could be, okay, 45, 50, then it makes sense. But even at the 21, 22 years of age, we take them through a leadership development program where the first thing and the fundamental starting point is about leading yourself and about your authenticity and your life story. And then we understand that to move into leading others, to end into leading in society, we feel that it is the right way to start with leading yourself. then that's the starting. But I would say this is across all our programs, no matter how, senior, junior, long, short, all of them go through a leadership development program. That today sustainability is quite fashionable, but this comes from our origins. It's about the individual, it's about the impact you make in others, and finally the impact you make in society. But obviously things, there is a clear sense of urgency, not only importancy, but urgency that we have only one world, and we need to make a clear transition. And we always say that our main philosophy is that, yes, we could do better as a corporate citizen. Let me be very clear here, and we are working on that. But we have, our main priority is to always guarantee that we have this kind of multiplier effect. We are one corporate citizen, we educate a couple of thousand colleagues around around the world, around the year from all over the world. And if we have to prioritize, and if as a dean, and sometimes my colleagues probably disagree, I have to prioritize what goes first. We always say the multiplier effect, than just we showing a very nice picture with all the indicators. So then with that, I would leave it here. I have more things to say afterwards, but I think basically starting with the leading yourself before you go into leading the world. And second, making sure as an institution that your main impact is in the impact that others will make out there. And our influence can be, enormous. So that is our full obsession, and I'll come back with other things that I'd like to share today. Thank you, Katrin.
Jordi, thank you so much. Super relevant. I think if we can lead ourselves and do that well, we see that so much with the research we do around CEOs as well. The better they are at leading themselves, the more of an impact they can do. It is that mindset shift of how do I define my role in the world, and how do I define the role of the institution I'm leading in the world. What a beautiful example, Jordi, of how you're defining the role of your institution. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Varun, you're the Dean Designate of SPJ. You're going in. So I look forward to hearing from you kind of how you are going into your school, what you've learned already, particularly I think around learning methods, student support of your school. So looking forward to your fresh view of SPJ. You're muted for the moment.
Yeah, thank you. It'll be fresh and brief, I suppose, given that I'm relatively new. So a few things. We sort of split the things we do into classroom activities and non-classroom activities. So from a learning perspective, within the classroom activity context, besides the kinds of things folks would do, as good practice anyway, we have a couple of specialized programs that are perhaps more tightly aligned with the 17 SDG goals. And one of them is a master's program for women returning to the workforce after a long break, which I think is a very good initiative to have. A second one is a master's program for development professionals who are working in the social sector. While these are not the primary, business drivers of the school, we think of them as extremely strategic and mission appropriate for what we do. And we support them, regardless of whatever the financial implications would be. And then looking at the non-classroom activities, sort of tying it back to what both Ajit and Jordi talked about. So like Jordi said, our leadership development program is something that all students go through at the very beginning of the program. And there's a very tight emphasis there, which is helping people understand me and then make the transition from me to we, right? So there's really two aspects to that leadership development program that appears to be a very solid foundation. And similar to what Ajit said about Give Goa, there's a program with about 300 participating organizations called DOCC. It's around corporate citizenship that every student participates in. And this is it runs like a course over a period of a month where students go and immerse themselves in rural environments in villages, and they would just be out of the campus for 4 weeks in order to make this happen. And that, again, achieves the same purposes that Ajit mentioned, taking a bunch of privileged kids and helping them recognize that there is a larger context that they work within. One thing that is unique, and I'll stop with that, is a very nice program that, at least in the United States, if you're familiar with the Big Brother, Big Sister organization, where, you pair up older students or older adults with younger folks. It's pretty informal here in the States. I was a Big Brother, Big Sister, myself when I was an engineer. However, what I think SPJIMR has done is actually formalize it nicely so that every student takes for a whole year a mentorship program with students who are living around the institute, but living in urban poverty, right? So the combination of the DOCC, the Corporate Citizenship Program, and this mentorship program sort of exposes students to both rural contexts and urban poverty contexts and sort of what their own individual contributions could be, and makes them feel empowered, right? You're not dependent on a big system. You yourself with an individual mentorship can make something happen. So I'll stop at that, Katrina, but thank you for having us here.
Thank you, Varun. So insightful. I think this is now the second time we hear something so critical, which is everybody goes through these programs, mandatory. In sustainability, we look at this so much. Leadership development program must be for everybody. So congratulations for having found ways to make that happen in an institution. It's not that easy. We'll look at how you got there more in the second round. Thank you so much, Varun. Percy, from Peru, a third school from, I would say, from the edges, not from the North American Europeans, but from the edges. And we'll get more into, we'll get more into our hypothesis of why these schools at the fringes are doing so well. The fringes, not in terms of kind of like at the fringes of the world in terms of, you know how I mean. My theory would be change happens at the fringes and not in the center. We'll go more into that. So, Percy, handing over to you on governance or public engagement. What did Centrum PUCP do so well?
Well, thank you for the invitation. And my comment should be directed basically to the management teams of our colleagues who are part of this discussion. To understand what he have done is important to know the context. Centrum Business School is part of the Católica University of Peru. The university has 100 years, and our business school have almost 21 years old. We are one of the leading business schools in Peru. In terms of economic sustainability, recruitment, and any other measures, Centrum was doing very well. But besides that, you should know that in Latin America and in Peru, we have a country with 70% of informality. That's 1/3 of the population is in extreme poverty and very difficult other. Basically, we are a developing economy, and most of our people have a lot of problems. So what we decided to analyze is if education as usual, it's enough to our context. And I mentioned before the context because what I want to show you is that our steps were not defined by the market. It was defined by our own analysis. And our conclusion basically is, or was, that we need to give a different answer to our local problems. And just to make it easy, business as usual, business education as usual is not enough for our reality. So we decided to start thinking in terms of what different answers can we deliver in our context. Sustainability in a business school is a continuing process. It should never start. And it's very complicated to start. This is how we decided first to try to force the process from top to bottom, and it doesn't work. So we decided that this has to be a cooperative process. And in that sense, one of the main important things that we develop is we make a market research trying to analyze and giving voice to all our stakeholders in order to convince our faculty and our administrative staff of the need of change the way and the mode in which we were delivering our educational services. So the first step was to redefine our business mission. In the core, it's basically the same, but we show the faculty and the staff that our stakeholders were asking for something different. And to summarize it is that they ask for put the human being at the center of all the decisions that we made in business, in polity issues, and so on. So we transform our mission. Maybe in world basis is common, but for us, it was really a great transformation. It means that now we educate in a business for a better world. When we define this, we force the discussions in all the different bodies of the business school in order to transform the programs, the form that we recruit faculty, and many other different things. We transform our international advisory board, and we create for us a new student and alumni council. In terms of the internationally advisory board, in the past, this was basically academicians. Now it's a mixed, and I should say maybe 60% are practitioners and 40% are academicians from around the world. But when we select the people and the companies that are represented in our international advisory board, most of them, if not all, are companies and business schools who have in their DNA the sustainability. And in terms of the alumni council, we give the students a voice in order to show us what needs to change. So those are two important things, because when we go inside the business school, we come with the feedback of these international and student stakeholders. And with all that information, we transform practically, integrally our MBA program, increasing the percentage of humanity courses in the curriculum, because as we mentioned before, if the human being is at the center, we not only have to give the students hard skills, technical skills, but more important is humanistic courses to learn about them and how to serve others. I should say those are maybe the most important steps that we can share with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It builds so nicely on what we have shared. This is so interesting. If I may, I'd like to kind of hear your insights in terms of how we have been trying to understand, to make sense out of this year's rating in terms of what schools are listed where. Our hypothesis is, and I look forward to you contradicting, expanding, developing. Our hypothesis has been to say, look at these schools who are leading here in level 5 and 4. Many of these schools are in economies where the role of the business school or the university is yet much closer, still much closer to society than it is in some of the established countries, where there are very clear roles of civil society institutions that have taken in many ways the place or even the responsibility that probably a business school will still consider as relevant in where they are, given the current state of development possibly, or the size and the extent of the societal and environmental challenges that are coming up. I'm curious, how do you read this map of transforming, of pioneering around business schools. Jordi, could I have your insights, please?
Yeah, but I probably will kind of, you know, because there's the perspective from our side is that since we are in Barcelona, Spain, Europe, and it could be perceived as a Western, you know, kind of response.
And you are.
But at the same time, you know, I would say 80–90% of the people that responded from our community are not from Spain. So also in our case, this is kind of like a potential outlier there. But I mean, I clearly see, and many of our participants from more, let's say, European perspective, they love when we do our innovation, we do innovation challenges, and they have to come up with a company in as little as 3 days. And you see there the magic happening where you have participants from the developing world, from parts of the planet that are not so, I mean, with all the opportunities, and then you see both, you know, perspectives from the developing world, but at the same time from the established, you know, economies, how they work together. And just as an anecdote or not, but you know, we have even the winning team in one of the programs that we have, and it's about disruptive innovation. So they have to come up with an innovation that we don't force, by the way, in this case, that it has to be sustainability oriented initiative. But in the last 2 years that we have done it, in the finals, 100% of them, they have a clear positive impact. They are clearly making kind of the impossible possible, the, let's say, exclusive inclusive, or the inaccessible accessible. So, and we see how sometimes even parts of the world that is not served, supported by this new, I mean, this technology-driven initiative. So that's my quick reaction, but nothing clear on you know, specific, because you know better than I do the reason why, or potentially the response.
Varun, from you, from kind of your external view maybe as well, what do you make out of this ranking and the nations that are listed at the schools?
Well, I mean, one thing that's conspicuous is the absence of American universities. And, you know, basically having lived here for 33 years, I'll actually comment on maybe that particular factor as opposed to the presence of those from other places. See, business schools are professional schools similar to engineering schools or medical schools or law schools, right? So one way of looking at it is, you know, business schools are about a professional practice. And that, I think, is the view that a lot of the schools here take. And when you're looking at professional practice, you're looking automatically at impact of your practice on, you know, on the subject of practice, right, on society as a whole. There is a second view, which I think is held more commonly in the US, which is, unfortunately, business school is viewed not as a professional school, it is viewed as a research-oriented initiative. The term used is physics envy, right? And you try very, very hard to claim that you're worthy of academic respect. And that becomes the dominant aspect as opposed to worrying about the impact of practice. So it may just be a matter of priorities as to why the United States in particular is that lacking in this group of people that you've identified.
Percy, what is your perspective? Thank you, Varun.
I understand that it depends on the context. And as I mentioned before, in a country with a huge percentage of poverty and a perception of inequality, the business sector is continuously in the media, because in the past year we have many scandals of corruption and many other problems. So our students and the people start looking for something different, something who is related to values, to impact, to make the things different, to how to solve the situation. Just to give you actual information, in the following days, we are going to have a new president, and the most probable is that the new president comes from a communist party, and all the business sector is totally astonished for that result. And the business and the capitalist model and the liberal model is in question in Peru. So our mission is try to show that we can, through the entrepreneurs and to the companies, try to show that we can solve the situation, that we can make more inclusion, that we can make more rich and distribute this richness around all the country. So I should say that the context, as you mentioned before, is very relevant.
Thank you. Ajit, curious on your Indian perspective. How do you look at this list?
Difficult question. I mean, I was kind of trying to, rack my brain to see what do I make of it. I think one of the things is maybe, if I had to look at 15 years back, if a higher education institution in India had to put sustainability as being important to them, a lot of people on let's say, on management boards of these organizations would have felt that's not an important priority. I think things have changed. I also think that there are a lot of reasons why those things have changed. I think, prosperity is something that's happened worldwide. And with prosperity, I think realizations of challenges that are faced are very, very different. If you look at climate change, for example, I don't think there's any part of the world that doesn't see the effects of climate change. It wasn't so, say, 15 years back, you wouldn't have seen schools from these parts of the world figuring there because it just wouldn't have been, an important part of what's, on their agenda. If you look at income disparities are much higher in these countries, as you said, that are on the fringes. And therefore, I do think that students are able to see these as students, organizations, boards, all of them are able to see these as realities that these are problems that we have to solve. And that's the reason, because they're either kind of more in your face. It's impossible for anybody to be able to ignore those. I think some of these realities are not in your face. In climate change is in your face everywhere in the world. But some of the others, if you look at income disparities, if you look at people who are, who don't get a fair chance in society, those are things I think you'll see in many more of these countries.
Thank you. Thank you for your perspective. Yeah, interesting. And for those who are listening, of course, also feel free to add your hypotheses of this, of these changes, of this list, of this extraordinary list, also in the chat. Very happy to kind of add that into the conversation. And I'm noting the questions on the side. If I could do a short last round among us before we open up to questions, I'd like to kind of combine two questions into one. All of you are clear in terms of what have been the critical transformation steps to get you here. We've looked at that, we've kind of talked about this. And I've also had asked you ahead of time the question, if you would build a school from scratch, what would you do? So may I suggest that we combine these into kind of one round of a response of saying, if you would build a school from scratch, kind of key recommendations that probably also help in our audience. And Ajit, would you like to get started?
Yeah, I think, and I'll just start with taking the PIR framework of the 3 factors and the 7 parts of it. I think the most important part would be the first one, that's energizing, governance and culture. I think everything else would flow from governance and culture. And therefore, foundations of an organization, which would mean, the kind of constitution of governance, leadership, ownership structure. I mean, not relevant everywhere. If it's a private organization, ownership structure would make a difference. If you have to start from scratch, I think that's something that would be important to see. Who invests with what objectives, who are the people who are there to support, what's the leadership like, why are they starting that particular organization. So that's one important part. That I think will then result in organizational values, and those organizational values will then dictate, so to say, everything, what will be the kind of programs you'll run, whether it's going to be research programs, what kind of research programs, how much of societal contributions you're going to have, what kind of a campus you're going to have, for example, what kind of people you're going to bring in, the people strategy. I think all of that will flow from there. So if I have to give a short answer on if you had to start from scratch, I think that's all that I would want to get right. If I get that right, I think everything else will flow from that.
Thank you very much, Ajit. I think we did some analysis last year on the data to see that there is a high correlation between those schools who have done well in energizing were leading in terms of the other factors. So yes, there seems to be some statistical data around this. This confirms. Percy, what's your take? If you build a school from scratch based on what would be your recommendations? Key things.
The first and the starting point is a clear definition of your purpose and to align all the resources to that purpose. Saying that, the following steps should be to define who's going to be the leader of the process. And this has to be a guy who walk the talk. It must have to be a person who lives what he feels, who inspire the whole team. Saying that, the following steps should be basically, I should start with a new faculty, younger people with a new DNA, who love the sustainability, who can help you to make this dream. Because in most business schools, it's the truth. The faculty and the finance and marketing professors, who am I am a marketing professor, are the ones who are the resistance inside the institution. So if I should start from scratch, I should change totally the faculty in order to go more rapidly to the purpose. And in the administrative staff, you need exceptional leaders. You don't have time to be solving little issues. You need smart guys, practitioners, not necessarily faculty, who can help you, to do all the administrative stuff, allowing you to focus in what is your core, the education process.
Thank you so much. Very provocative and pretty much impossible for an existing school, but this is the freedom of starting a new school. Thank you so much. Varun, would you like to build on what are your insights for building a new school, going into a coming in as dean designate?
Well, I don't think I get to build a new school coming in. So maybe what I'll do is I'll talk about maybe extending what I think SPJIMR could do. And then I will throw in one idea of a new thing, but that is a very personal opinion at this point, right? In terms of extending what the school could do, I think at SPJIMR, the student feedback seems to indicate that if you broadly take the 17 SDG goals, they fall into two buckets, right? They fall into issues or topics related to social justice, and they fall into topics related to environmental stewardship. I mean, it's a gross oversimplification, but the 17 can roughly be grouped into those two. And our students definitely felt that we could do more on the environmental stewardship part. I think they felt very, very good about their contributions and being plugged into the social justice aspects, right? So I think that would be a logical area for us in the spirit of continuous improvement to figure out how to do that. A second area in terms of continuous improvement would be, coming back to your framework around engaging. I think my institute suffers from maybe an overdose of modesty, and they go about doing their business and doing good things. But in terms of engaging, while the institute definitely serves as a role model, I think there are opportunities to be a more active participant in public dialogue and an active participant in policy. And I think that requires you to be a little more aggressive. And like in the play Hamilton, you want to be in the room where it happens, as that song goes. And that might be another thing where all of our schools could possibly be more aggressive about, actively participating in policy decisions, right? So those would be two extensions. In terms of just a personal opinion on a brand new thing, I think digital is something that really has to be taken into account within these 17 goals. I think digital technologies have the chance to not just transform in a good way, but potentially in a terrible way, all of these goals. What is the role of AI, for example, in ensuring refugee resettlements? How might you use blockchain to basically figure out how refugees coming back to conflict zones actually still retain possession of their property? So I personally, being a Silicon Valley guy, would probably take a very digital first view towards the 17 problems and lay out an agenda. But again, that's my personal personal view. It doesn't necessarily reflect what my institute might end up doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We're talking, we're having a conversation where you represent your personal views. I think, that's clear. Thank you for clarifying that. Jordi, last but not least, I'm curious about your insights about starting a new school and what your insights would be.
Well, thank you. Difficult to say things that are different to what the colleague said about starting with the purpose, making sure that the entire organization is part of the movement. I think this is something I'm learning by doing it, which is when you put the focus on one stakeholder, then potentially you don't cover the other. So that is something that I would, if I would start again, I would make sure and I would find a way to balance better the stakeholder, in our case, very, very participant driven, but it's true that there are many other stakeholders that could contribute better. And I would also say, I mean, as a dream more than as a building a school is, and going back to the comments about the digital, I think the digital transformation is, I mean, if we compare the impact of digital transformation with the sustainable transformation, still sustainable transformation is down there and the digital transformation is up there. So what we are trying to bring and what we envision, that's why we always connect the word sustainability with business and innovation. And in fact, a critical point in our journey of sustainability has been the launch of a master's in sustainable business and innovation. And I think as a business school, I mean, we need to partner. And that's why, for me, the most critical one in achieving the goal is the number 17 goal, partnerships. And that you cannot be the expert on all, from the ecologic perspective, from the business, innovation, digital. And I think we all have to cooperate. So my dream business school in this regard would be very ecosystemic with a clear purpose, and that we are trying to be as relevant as the digital transformation. That would be my very high level dream.
Thank you so much. Yeah, interesting. Super, thank you so much. I'm now looking at the chat and some questions from the audience. And I would suggest that not everybody responds to all questions so that we can really have a large variety. So I'm just kind of reading a question and I would invite maybe one of you to respond. An interesting question that came up early on was to say, how do you ensure that your students know about what is happening in your school so they can actually report on it or reflect on it, consider in the rating and peer rating? How do you go about it? That is a challenge. Who would like to take that question? Varun?
Sure. And this may be an answer that I think Ajit may have alluded to as well. Our institute is based around student clubs with very strong faculty involvement. And I think these student clubs provide to a large degree the sort of the cultural and the social heartbeat of the institute and the campus. And I think that is sort of one way in which groups communicate. So if there's a particular group around, let's say, recycling and green initiatives inside the campus, and maybe there is a separate group that is looking to promote a social entrepreneurship annual fair. While each of them certainly is aware of the things going on within the student club that they belong to, I think the cross-functional conversations at the student level between the different clubs is sort of one means through which I think students can learn about what the other clubs happen to be doing. But that only works in two ways, if two things are true. One, the total number of clubs sort of encompasses the totality. And two, if there is strong communication at the student level between those clubs.
Thank you. Yeah, wonderful. Appreciate it. Another question. I invite just one person to pick that up. Is the audience is interested in how is for your perspective, how is the positive impact rating different to other sustainability reportings, rankings, ratings that you have, and how may it help you in your transformation? Who would like to pick that question? Jordi, I saw you unmute.
Yep, I can take this one if you want. Well, and also even Financial Times, although in a ridiculous percentage, but it's also incorporating the CSR perspective or sustainability perspective. I mean, when we think about the positive impact rating, is that the fact that it's led by a student and is student for a student is an interesting perspective. And also when we see the qualitative feedback on start, stop, continue, doing, also this is something that you don't get from the others. So, I mean, one of the good points on this positive impact rating is that you get qualitative feedback, while in the others, you get a position. We are in the corporate nights that has been mentioned there, also well ranked, but there is a matter of number, you know, and then you can't really learn much from it. And this is what we like from the positive impact rating, is that you can learn at the same time, obviously, as it's been addressed, and I know you will, you know, this is a process in itself, a positive impact rating that is incorporating other perspectives as well, beyond the students. And I think we schools are also, you know, interested in the development of the positive impact rating itself. And then you nailed with this point on best business schools for the world. I think this is what catches at least our attention, and it unites our community to be part of it, is because of this difference between in and for the world. This is really an excellent motto, I would say, and mission.
Thank you so much, Jordi. Indeed, it's big and important for us to kind of create a learning community across and among each other. And I so appreciate how openly we're sharing here in this session. It's one example for the kind of sessions we do, where we have best practice examples of schools, of deans, of different leaders of institutes sharing. Thank you so much. Another question we have here coming in, there's a bit of questions around US participations in the rating. I'm going to kind of leave that to the side. That is interesting, but given that we only have 4 minutes to go, Urs Jäger is asking, the premise of a student-driven rating is that students are empowered and have the ability to critique professors, deans, and the entire school. Can we assume that this is the case in all peer schools? It's a good question. I'm curious who would like to embrace that. Maybe Percy, you've been doing this for 2 years now. I don't know whether you have some insights.
Well, in our case, the students have totally free to express their opinions, but we differentiate very clearly which opinions are related to the administrative process and which are related to an improvement process. All those which is related to administrative policies and situations, they are rules, and we have to proceed with that rules. But we are open to receive all the feedback through the different channels that the students have to express their comments about professors, authorities, and the policies of the business school.
I'm curious, and anybody, again, free to answer. I'm curious how the positive impact rating has changed your schools, for any of you, your school's engagement with students. Have you started including students in more of your governance processes, or what is the change that you have been considering or have implemented?
Well, I just would like to say, Katrin, that for us, all rankings and accreditation is not an end itself. Those are tools to be better. So this is the first year that we are part of the rating, but we are not planning to use it as a marketing tool. It's more a way for us to be sure that we are in the right path to do the right things.
Varun, do you have something to add? Or Ajit, please. Sounds like you have something to add. Please.
Yeah, so I think it was quite an eye-opener, you know, the kind of qualitative feedback that came from students. I think that's students are one of the most important constituencies in probably the most important constituency in a business school. And, let's say we ran the Give Goa initiative. It's not very easy when it's an initiative that all students are part of. When they're going out of the field in tough conditions, you'll reflect back and you'll say it looks good. But when they're going through the motions of doing it, you're not really sure. The feedback is not always positive. So I think it did give us a lot of reinforcement on many of the things that we did, that students too, it wasn't just the faculty and it wasn't just the staff and it wasn't just, the management, but students were very gung-ho about solving social problems and about realities like that. And I think that was really good reassurance. And therefore, I think it's more important. And therefore, I do think that we'll have, it's a little early, the PIR rating. We didn't participate last year, but I do think we'll have, more student participation and decision making as a result of that.
Thank you. And with this note of students, I would like to close this panel. Thank you, Jordi, Varun, Percy, and Ajit for your lively, authentic, and engaged participation. Really enjoyed it. I would like to hand over to Lexi, who has instructions of who goes to what rooms next. Thank you, everybody, for having been here.